Hey everyone, it's Jeff with the Second Chance Podcast. Coming up next, Dan Storey. Dan is it's a great listen, easy listen, talks a lot about mindset. It's, he's he's got some books, some programs, all sorts of cool things that he talks about during our podcast. And he has spent a lot of time working inside of just behavioral sciences, um, mental discipline things, and just really learning how we tick and how our brains work, and working through imposter syndromes and all sorts of um, different just value nuggets, all while competing and getting ready for Mr. Olympia and the World Bodybuilding Championship. So, on this episode, he's about 3 weeks out from um, his competition, so we'll be learning more about that and just the mindset that goes into kind of his daily routine as well. So let me know what you think. Thank you for sharing, liking, and commenting on our episodes as we grow, and just I appreciate it. Thank you a whole lot. Let me know what you think about this episode. Welcome back to the Second Chance Podcast, where we dive into stories of resilience, transformation, and the moments that change everything. Today, I'm excited to be talking with Dan Storey, a man who is not just a motivational speaker and author, but also a master practitioner of NLP and a top natural physique bodybuilder in the UK. Dan has spent years studying behavioral psychology, mastering the mental game of success, and transforming his own life by getting out of what he calls the trap of average. At around 40, Dan had a moment of realization he wasn't living up to his full potential. Not happy, but not miserable enough to change. Something clicked, and since then, Dan has not only reshaped his body, but his entire life. And he's here to share how we can all break free from limits we set for ourselves. He's currently prepping for the Mr. Olympia World Bodybuilding Championships and has a new book in the works called Unstuck. And today we're diving deep into what it takes to push past mediocrity and live a life that's fulfilling and truly extraordinary. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. The intro was amazing. I'm excited to meet this guy, and then I realized it's me. So, hopefully we can power through this. Like you said, I'm prepping for a competition 3 weeks out from the World Championship, the Mr. Olympia competition. So today is one of those days where there's not a lot of carbs going into the system, but I think we can make it all the way through this episode, and the caffeine's kicked in, so I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. No, it's good. You'll have to take me on as your hype man. I'll be your intro guy wherever you take the stage. So, listen, we talked about NLP, and I just teased it there. But as a master practitioner of NLP and some other degree in behavioral decision sciences, how do those tools help you personally overcome obstacles like imposter syndrome and self-doubt? But let's explain to our audience what NLP is too.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go back all the way to the start. So actually back in the day, my background is maths and sports science. In theory, I'm really good at counting press-ups and watching people do exercise. And when I went back to university, I was studying physiology, studying nutrition. I thought I wanted to be working with athletes. And a friend of mine gave me this CD. He said, "Hey, you know what? You should listen to this." Back in the day of CDs, kind of gives my age away a little bit. But he said, "Listen to this. I think you're going to find it interesting." And it was a CD about neuro-linguistic programming, on this idea of NLP. And I found it fascinating. I started to use it with coaching clients, the people I was personal training with. Some of them had businesses, and they said, "Hey, I think these ideas are going to help me with kind of team efforts. Can you come in and do some sessions with us here?" And long and short of it, I thought, I'm going to go and study this thing in a little bit more detail. Ended up going to school, dived into the content, and kind of studied this alongside the fitness side. And then ultimately that moved into kind of being my main career is this concept of neuro-linguistic programming, which is effectively a language that we can use as a way of decoding our behavior from a psychological perspective. So it was actually created by two guys. One was a computer scientist, one was a linguist, and they effectively said, how can we decode what we do mentally and then rebuild that in a way that we can kind of replicate it? So for example, if we're in rapport. How do we code rapport? We know when we're in it, we're kind of getting on well, things are going well, but how do you build that? How can you create the recipe that allows you to build rapport? And so lots of coaching, lots of techniques from kind of interaction and communication where these techniques are applied. And I guess that I found it really interesting. I thought I'd dive in and spend some time studying it a little bit further.
Yeah, you can. I mean, that's really dialing in. When you work with, like, you're a bodybuilder and you're not only just competing, you're going to compete in Mr. Olympia. That's when you start competing at that level, it's those things that set you apart. I've worked with some CrossFit athletes over the years, and they're like, stretching is just important to us as lifting weights because it's so competitive. And when you get to a certain level, it's these small adjustments that you make.
Absolutely.
Tell me, I mentioned it, and you talked about it a little bit too. Just that moment of realization around the age of 40, where you decided to stop selling for average. And here's I want to unpack this a little bit so people grab my perspective. Is that's a lot of times when people start pausing, they start pumping the brakes. They've got comfort, they got career, they got all their life maybe looking just like the perfect picture. But you said the heck with average. Can you walk us through that experience and what was that turning point that made you just go all in?
It's a really weird moment. Like I said, I had quite a good job, had a family, and my little one was growing up, and we went to the beach in England, a place called Weston-super-Mare. If you've ever been there, you'll understand that the super bit of it is ironic. But we were there on the beach. It was summer, and we're running around, daughter's splashing in the water, kind of chasing through the sand and all those things. And sun was out, so I took the t-shirt off, and we're just hanging on the beach. It was a really nice family day. And then later on, my mum shows me this photo, and I look at it, and I'm like, I don't know, something just kind of went in my head. And, I spend a lot of time teaching. Effectively, my job is a teacher, right? I teach salespeople, I teach business people, I teach leadership teams. That's kind of where I spend a lot of my time. I coach individuals, and I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's see if we can push ourselves a little bit harder. I'm constantly encouraging people to do more. And something about this photo just hit me. And it was like, go on and do it yourself. And what I saw was somebody who was not putting in maximum effort, who had settled and, like you said, started to take the foot off the pedal a little bit. And, I've done some pretty cool things over time. I think I've challenged myself and I've pushed myself outside of my comfort zone. And, I've done well from a work perspective. I played sport at a pretty competitive level. And what I saw was this guy who's had a whole bunch of excuses. I can't explain it more than that. I just saw more excuses than motivation. And I just thought to myself, I said, is that who I want to be? Is it really? And, oftentimes we're able to sweep it under the rug a little bit. Right? You have these feelings of, I should probably do some more, but let me go and do this thing over here. And we distract ourselves, or we tell ourselves it's not as bad as it could be. But something about this photo just hit me. And I said, I need to do something. And, we had a daughter, so I couldn't do all the things that I used to do. But I thought, okay, well, what can I do? How can I challenge myself? And fitness has always been a part of my life. It's been a big part. And the question kind of came into my head is, all right, well, how far can you take this? How far can you push yourself? How hard can you train? And actually, there was a genuine question is, can you discipline yourself to do all the other stuff? Because I knew I can work hard. Like exercise and intensity isn't a problem. Like get in the gym, get some pre-work down. But the question was, do you have it all? Do you have like the discipline, the consistency, the willpower, like all of that stuff? Because that is what it's going to take to do anything significant. And it was a genuine question. And I thought, you know what, let's go find out.
That's pretty cool. And when you talk about that, you're also like factoring in, it's maybe not necessarily about moving the weight, but can I do all this and still be a good dad?
Yeah.
Can I still balance, right? Can I find those things? But, and bodybuilding is something that's physical and mental.
Mm-hmm.
What parallels do you see between bodybuilding and personal development, just in the terms of sacrifice and growth?
I think there's quite a few. And any kind of sport, there's a lot of crossovers between sport and business as well. So whether it's a fitness thing, whether it's a business thing, I think we've all got a few elements. And the first one is changing our expectation of ourselves. We've got to dream a bit bigger, right? What is the next level? What can we achieve? And I think we, especially as you get old, you kind of play within little bounds of realism, and that's not realistic. I tried that when I was a young person, and oh, it's great, you've got all those hopes and dreams, but let me tell you what the real world is going to be like. And we kind of just end up lowering our expectations a little bit. And I don't think we need to. I think, especially as you get older, you get wisdom and you get insight that allows you to kind of go off and do more. So, but you are running out of time and energy a little bit to some extent. So you have to balance those things. But, we're going to end up somewhere in a few years. So I guess it's a question of where we want to end up. And really, do we want to do the same thing tomorrow as we did yesterday? And so that's the expectation transformation. And for me, it was a kind of, let's see what we can do physically. Let's see what I can do from a bodybuilding perspective. I'm also doing it as an author. That's a fun one. And really trying to lean into this writing career. And I say really trying to, because there's an element of me that I'm comfortable in one space, and actually the writing side is an area where I'm not entirely comfortable. I'm getting better at it and definitely putting the work in. But I guess this comes to the second part, which is as soon as you say that you're going to do something is where the imposter syndrome kicks in. And, I was chatting to somebody about this the other day. I said, I have a whole bunch of reference for me as a trainer and a speaker and like working in the sales space. I've got a career built from it. Like that's certainty. That's a safe space. But if I go somewhere else, like immediately I'm saying, well, I want to achieve something different. I don't have the reference point. I don't have the support aspects. I don't have all of those times where I'm saying, yeah, you did that, you did that, you did that. And so there's an idea that who I am today is a result of all of these experiences, but who I am tomorrow is going to be a result of all the future experiences. And that's the gap. And it's that gap where imposter syndrome kicks in. And, I don't know if you've tried anything new recently, but oftentimes we try things a couple of times and we're like, oh my goodness, that was so embarrassing. I hope I don't do that again and just mess it up. And that's, most people then say, I'll go back, and I'll kind of just go back into that safe space. But the challenge is, it's not going to be safe. You've got to stay outside your comfort zone. You've got to get into that kind of comfortable being uncomfortable space. And the longer you can stay in it, the more chance you're going to have of reaching your goal. It's not nice. It's not a fun place to be. And I remember some of the conversations like I had when I was in that point, even before my first bodybuilding competition. I was saying to people, I'm a bodybuilder. This is what I'm doing. But in my head, I'm going, you haven't competed, Dan. You're not a bodybuilder. What are you telling people you're a bodybuilder if you're a fraud or you're fake? What are you doing? This is my own voice. So you come back to the NLP thing. It's like, okay, I understand it's happening. What do I do with it? But it's funny. I keep telling myself, Muhammad Ali, I think there's a quote, he said, I am the greatest long before he even stepped in a boxing ring. So if it was good enough for Muhammad Ali, then I think it's okay for me. But that's definitely kind of the biggest two challenges, I think, is really getting unstuck at the beginning and saying, I want something a bit more, and then sticking at it long enough until it actually happens.
You hit it. That's we all, and for the folks that are sitting there that are listening to this, and this is speaking, you think we're speaking directly to you. No, we're speaking to each other. Because imposter syndrome, most everybody deals with it. The folks that are in the larger stage, they just have an influence of people that keeps them full of positivity. They surround themselves with the right people. So it's funny you say that, because sometimes I'll be like, if you ever, one of my friends was like, man, it looked like you was talking to somebody on the phone, or you were, I was like, nah, I was talking to myself. It's like, sometimes I just have to stop, and I'll have this whole, like, shut it off. That's enough. I'm tired of listening to you, and I'm talking to myself. They're like, I thought you was talking to your kids or something. I'm like, nah, that was directed at me. And it's a great place here. And because we have the attention of those folks that are struggling with this. What's some simple advice to that person that's struggling with that imposter syndrome? What's some advice that you give to others outside of like all that value you just gave us? Is there any other little special moments or sauce that you add?
So I'd say first one is, don't fight it. Like, people feel that I shouldn't have it. It's like, no, it's coming. It's coming. Anytime, like, if you set yourself a challenge that's far enough away from who you are that makes you feel uncomfortable, you're going to have two feelings. You're going to have an excitement and a passion, like, oh my goodness, this is going to be cool when I get there. But you're also going to have this gap where it's like, you're never going to get there. It's terrifying. And so living in that space is both infuriating and exciting at the same time. So don't fight it. Don't fight it. Welcome it and just say, oh, hello, I was waiting for you to come along. The second one is figure out how to make progress. Progress is key. And I remember like a couple of times, I'll give a couple of examples from bodybuilding and we'll turn it into less bodybuilding specific. In between competitions, you have what's called off season, which for, anybody who's competed knows this is the fun time. This is where you get to eat what you want, all of those things you didn't eat before. You make a list of like, oh, I'm going to knock these out as soon as I get into off season. And, I remember my first off season, I'm like, right, let's go. And probably went a little bit too hard on the celebrating and kind of congratulating myself. And I got to about as heavy as I could possibly get. I literally couldn't eat any more food. I couldn't physically get it in to put on any more weight. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, I've done too much. I've gone too far. This is such a big gap. How am I ever going to get ready for competition? And so set yourself a target, because I think most people, they say, okay, well, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks. No, I had 16 weeks to get from like really heavy to not as heavy. And in that time, I knew I needed to lose about 9 kilos, 10 kilos, which isn't unrealistic. And I've done it before. So, but over time, it's consistency, right? It's can I lose, it's about half a kilo a week. Can I put in half a kilo a week extra effort? Can I tighten up my diet? Can I do the work? Can I show up? And it's that, and it's like tiny little bits. And I know if I can do that in a week and I do it for a consistent amount of weeks, I'll get to my journey. Like no matter how hard it feels at the beginning, how far it feels away, if I've got a progress element, then I'm going to get there. So like with writing, for example, now I know I need to get to like, say 100,000 words or something like that, cut it down to 70. But the first thing is I've got to get to 100,000 words. How do I do that? I've got two options. Let's go to the extremes, right? I can write 100,000 words today. I've got pre-workout, right? It's in the drawer just here. I can type super fast. I can kind of cut everything off. I can, do those all-nighters that we used to do as kids. I've got an assignment to do. Let's go. Forget everything. So I can do 100,000 words in one go and destroy myself, right? And have nothing left in the rest of the world. Or I can do 2,000 words today. I can do 2,000 words tomorrow, and then 50 days later, I've got 100,000 words. And they might not be great words, but there's 100,000 words, and a lot of the work comes in edit, right? So there's a second phase. But if I give myself 50 days, then I can do that. But most people say, I'm going to give it a week or 2 weeks, and then nothing changes. And then they kind of go, oh, this doesn't work. And then they try something different. So I think that's the thing is find a metric that is going to be reliable to track your progress, and then give yourself a period of time, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, that you can consistently show up. Don't expect everything to happen at the beginning. This is the other thing with bodybuilding. Yeah. It's so annoying, and I get so frustrated. And I have to do these, I'm going to say, stupid check-in photos, right? So my brother's my coach every day, especially now. I have to send him a photo, whether I like it or not. And he'll point and poke and do all of these things, but it keeps me accountable. And it's that feedback element. It's that knowing that I'm on the right track, but all of the results come right at the end. So frustrating. Like the beginning of the diet, nothing. And then you're like, oh, maybe something's changing. And then literally those last 2 weeks, you're like, oh, there's a line there that wasn't there before. And that thing's coming through. And so it's always at the end. But most people will go to like 70%, 75% goal. Still not there. Persistence, commitment, discipline.
Cutting down the naysayers, I think, helps with that too. When you're surrounding yourself with folks that are willing to lift you up and not talk you down, I think those are a couple things that you can add in there that's helped me overcome imposter syndrome and having your and you underestimate how hard it is in that first. I think we always put it in business, that first year of business, how hard it is to accomplish. But then you take for granted how much you can accomplish in 5.
Yeah.
So same type mentalities with that. But you touched on this because competitive bodybuilding is not easy. This is more than a 40-hour-a-week job. That's a commitment. It is a absolute lifestyle. But then you touched on how you kind of balance your life and how you go to writing. But how do you keep that discipline into your other professional pursuits like your writing and coaching? Is that similar strategies, or what does that look like for you?
I'm definitely working hard on applying the same things. So it's contextual. The bodybuilding I've put into practice now, it's a lot easier. And I always have to remind myself, I am still amateur. Even I have this little card behind me that says I could go pro at some point, then I'm not there yet. And I had this conversation. Someone asked me, they said, what's the difference between an amateur and pro? I said, don't know yet. And because I don't know, I'm not prepared to go that far. But for me, the discipline is about sacrifice. It's sacrifice not from a goats and virgins perspective, not throwing anyone into volcanoes or anything along those lines. I think of it more as like a chess move. I'm not a great chess player, but I understand if I sacrifice a pawn to get a better position, like a strategic advantage, I'm going to do that. So for me, I sacrifice waking up early. Like I woke up this morning at 4:50 because I knew my alarm was going to go off at 5 and I don't want to wake up the family. So I'm trying to be all kind of ninja-like as I'm kind of walking around the apartment. 5 o'clock comes, same morning routine, kettle goes on, bowl of cereal, pre-workout because I'm a child. And coffee comes on. I get to the gym at 5:30 and I've got an hour and a half to work out. I'm back by 7. Right? That's my morning routine every single day. And I know if I do it in the morning, I haven't got to worry about squeezing it in later. The life is done. Because 7 o'clock, guess what? Little girl's getting ready for kindergarten. It's only next door, but we've kind of got that going on. During the day, what's happening? Well, my wife's going to work. I've got, interviews that I'm doing like this podcast. I'm writing. I have coaching clients. Occasionally I have training days that I have to kind of work around. I just had some, the other day, and you have to plan those things. Like, okay, well, where am I staying? Is there a gym there? Where can I get, 0% Greek yogurt in the locality? It's crazy. It's those kind of things. Little package of protein powder that I take down to the hotel reception and drive them crazy, or like the kitchen. They're like, oh, they don't understand, but you kind of end up communicating in a way where they don't have to understand. You just kind of laugh at yourself. But you mentioned something about like the social group and the peer group. I studied my master's in decision psychology as a way of kind of, again, further better understanding what our brains are doing. And there's this idea of theory of planned behavior, and there's 3 aspects that control behavior change. So if people are looking to make a change, they want to change a behavior, they have to have an intention first. And then there's 3 aspects that contribute to that. First one is the attitudes, like how we think about it. So if people, for example, with like the classic one is smoking, right? A lot of people, they never had the attitude of smoking is good for me. It's my 5-minute break. It's the only chance I get to relax. They're not even going to have the attention to try and smoke, let alone actually stop. The second one then is social norms or peer pressure. So think about who you surround yourself with and what impact they have on your expectations of yourself or the standards that you hold. If you hang around with people who are generally unfit, don't exercise, don't do anything, then where's your motivation to train? It's going to be, there's non-existent. This is why right now I'm trying to find authors in New York City just to go and hang around with them. Because, I know if I hang around with them, then it's going to rub off on me. The expectation, the standard, hey, Dan, did you do your writing today? Like you can only say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow so many times before they kick your butt, right? It's that kind of idea. And then the third one is this idea of self-esteem is, do we believe in our ability to follow through? And that's a fun one to play with, because that's probably one of the most important ones. And your social group definitely has a contribution to that. But we can also fuel our brains. And this is one thing that I found is, I don't know about you, but like when I work out, I like listening to music. And I've got 2 playlists at the moment. I've got my kind of gym playlist and I've got my angry playlist. And my angry playlist is just those days where you don't want to do it, but you like kind of get after it. So it's kind of dark and rap and hardcore, like hip hop and stuff. But then I used to listen to the same thing walking to the office. When we were back in Prague, I had an office and I'd go there every day. And I had about a half-hour walk from when we dropped my little girl off at school. And I either listened to one of 3 things. It was either audiobooks, motivational videos, or some of my gym playlists, because I thought I'd keep it on. On the days that I listened to motivational videos, I'd kind of get there and I'd be super inspired and hyped up and, listening to all these motivational speakers. And I'm like, I can conquer the world. Felt really good. On the days where I listened to audiobooks, I learned something new. I got really kind of cognitive and creative. And I thought, okay, well, what about this? And start bouncing ideas off that I hadn't actually thought about. On the days that I listened to my workout tape, again, here we go, dates, walking to the office, I was super energized and super pumped up, but my head was all over the place from a focus perspective. I just knew I wanted to crush stuff. I didn't know what it was. And it's funny, like rarely do we question that idea of what we're fueling our brain with. Occasionally we think about what we're fueling our body with, but what we're fueling our brain with actually puts us in such a different state. We should be aware of that as well.
You're spot on with the music. I don't listen to aggressive music. Sometimes if I can go to the gym and no one's there, I will work out in pure silence. You want to get your brain working and start getting into your thoughts. A lot of your imposter syndromes, a lot of the other stuff will come to life, and you can just have that battle with your brain in a quiet gym lifting weights. But I have helped people migrate off of aggressive music for this reason. They're like, I'm just not getting on at work. And I'm like, what are you listening on the way in?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I listen to Metallica, I'm like, you're driving down the interstate listening to Metallica, and then you're going into work and you can't figure out why no one's wanting to see you.
Yeah.
So you touched on that, man, and I can't echo that enough of that influence on just how you don't know that. And here's the other thing I wanted to point out. You talked about sacrifice, and you're like a bodybuilder, all these things. You mentioned getting up early, right? And planning.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your sacrifices that you spoke of that come out, right? All I did to sacrifice to find this new lifestyle was I moved my alarm clock back and I get up early and I go get my stuff done. And then I work hard to plan ahead to make sure I have everything I need. So folks, if you're listening, we're not talking about, like you said, we're not talking about throwing people in the volcano. We're talking about small, very, very deliberate changes. Dan, I did the exact thing when I was trying to find fitness, and I was one of those, I don't have time, guys. I moved my clock, started going to a 5 a.m. gym. And group exercise, they were like, hey, where you at? We're not starting, you get here. One of those type mentalities, and I end up going to, not only did I end up as a member, I ended up working there, transfer, and then I ultimately end up buying my own franchise because it moved me that much. So, folks, small changes will absolutely set you on a new trajectory.
And you mentioned CrossFit earlier. Like I used to go to a CrossFit gym in London, in Twickenham. And if they're listening, the guys at Blitz CrossFit, you guys rock. And I love CrossFit. Like I love so many aspects of it. For me as a sports person, I like the competitive aspect, but I also like the social side and the expectation. It's like, Dan, you're showing up for the show today, or we're going to hang out afterwards, or we're going to have some food, and it's going to be good food, or those kind of things. And you surround yourself with people who are holding you accountable and holding you to a higher expectation. You're going to perform. You're going to change your life somehow. It's a phenomenal setup, CrossFit, and any kind of group exercise along those lines is a very cool thing to take part in.
I've always done better with I perform well in chaos, right? But I also like, as soon as I learn those challenges and finding areas that make you a little bit uncomfortable, those you can find some serious growth at the end of those as well. CrossFit, or whether it's boot camp, I own a Fit Body boot camp. Some folks are reluctant to come into that group exercise because they're worried about how they'll be received because it's people.
Yep.
And then after they come in for a few classes, they're like, they're mad because 99.9% are mad that it took so long to get in the door because it's such a great community to be a part of. So help me.
I was going to say go on that because this is a topic I just want to have my point on. I think everyone is on a journey, and whether you'll always see people that are slightly further ahead of you, you'll always see people that are slightly further behind you, and group situations like this can be a little bit scary. I think most of the times in group environments like that, coming in as an outsider is going to be scary. Like going back to the imposter thing, like it's going to happen. Don't feel that, it's not going to happen, because anytime you try and insert yourself into a new group where you don't know what's going to happen, that uncertainty is going to trigger fear. Just do it. Because what I find is most people are encouraging to people who are on the same journey as them when they're further ahead. So for me, I've got my headphones on at the gym. I've got pre-workout. I'm entirely in the zone. Somebody came up who was a beginner and asked me for help or guidance or, hey, what would you do on this? I'm like, head off. Yep, I'm absolutely happy to help. I'm going to encourage the heck out of you, all of those things. People, we're all on the same journey. I think we should encourage them. That's not everyone. There are some idiots out there, who just don't want to do that. But generally, I think get into the thing, just step outside your comfort zone. It just takes one moment, right? That one moment where you say yes, and then as soon as you're in, you're in.
I think what we just were talking about, folks, is something that Dan talks about in this trap of average. And so many people fall into that trap. He just gave us, and between our conversation, he give us a few things of just some steps that you can use to step out of that. And one of them's just embracing some change and finding new circles of friends and things like that. But anything else you want to add to that, helping get out of that trap of average, Dan?
So it's funny because, like I said, I'm writing this new book. It's called Unstuck, because I've spoken to people about this idea as, what's the hardest part? And the hardest part is always the first step. Getting off the sofa, going to the gym, doing that first class. Always the first aspect is getting unstuck. And the more I look into it, the more I realize it's not our fault. And actually, this is the psychology aspect, is we are wired in a way that tries to keep us stuck. And again, let me give you an example. So earlier this year, I hurt my knee. I'm playing a ridiculous sport. I'm an oldish man, 45 years old now, and decided I'd go and play five-a-side soccer with some of the lads. And my brother-in-law, we were in Prague, and we're having a Sunday night. So Sunday night, think about it. Sunday night, it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. It's late. We've had a long week. Everyone's just kind of kicking around for fun. And the ball goes into a space, and two of us run to it, and we both kick it at exactly the same time. I'm kicking it like it's 8:30 on a Sunday night. He's kicking it like it's the final seconds of the World Cup. My knee did not want to bend that way, and I kind of ended up rolling on the floor. I was like, oh, this is bad. And I was also 3 weeks out from another competition, so I'm not playing any soccer right now. I'm rolling around. I try and stand up. I'm like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Pass me the ball. They pass me the ball. I always fall over trying to kick it. I'm like, this is not good. This is not good. Go and sit down. Look at it. Come on. Don't be too bad. And I walk out, do that whole, like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine, walking around, and things are a little bit wobbly. And I realized that that's it for the evening. So I said, guys, I'm going to go home. I get home. The family are in bed. Sit up on the sofa, put some ice on it, and then go onto Google, right? You're like, Google, what happened to my knee? You can figure out anything if you kind of Google it long enough. It turns out I had a medial collateral ligament strain. And there's 3 different versions. There's the light, medium, and severe. And I decided that I had the mild version because it couldn't be that bad. So, a little bit of rest, a little bit of ice, and all those things, and I'll be okay. And so, a couple of weeks I expected to be off my feet, and not off my feet, but out of training, and I get back into football in a couple of weeks later. But it took a lot longer than that. It took a little bit longer. And there's this idea that it wasn't that bad. I didn't think it was that bad. Now, if it had been worse, I would have done something different, right? I would have gone to the doctor. I'd have had somebody take a scan of it. If there's a bone sticking out or something, then I would have had some pretty serious treatment. And so think about this. There's a continuum of, at one extreme, it's not so bad. And then the other extreme, it's terrible. We do different behaviors. So the question is, where do we cross over? Where do we cross over? What point on that continuum do we say it goes from it could be worse to that's bad enough? And then we change. And we take things a little bit more seriously. Now, obviously, in my knee situation, less important. But let me say, if I'm in a terrible job or a terrible relationship, I could say, oh, it's not that bad. It's on the mild side of things. Yeah, it's not great, but, whatever. It could be worse. And at the other end, there's something that terrible happens, and we're like, no, this is it. I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to leave this relationship, any of those things. So it's a continuum, and it's all mental. And this is a paradox known as the region beta paradox. It's a psychological thing. It's like the idea that we'll walk for a bit, But if it's further away, we'll cycle. But we make really bad decisions in this middle ground where we probably walk when we should cycle, or we cycle when we should walk. And we just put it off by saying it's not that bad. And so the question is, how do we make it terrible? How do we make it feel bad? And we can do little things. So first of all is we should become aware of the region beta paradox. And let me give you a real example. I don't know, do you do the video on this? But let me show you the video. I have this Garmin watch from the time where I thought I could run, but I can't really. I don't know if you can see on there. It's held together by a little hairband. That's my daughter's hairband. So I kind of borrowed that. The plastic bits snapped. And the reason I haven't replaced the strap is because I've said it could be worse. I've kind of managed to hold it together with a little hairband. It doesn't look great, but most of the time it's undercover. And if I do anything smart, I have my fancy watch. But it's not that bad. How many of those do we have in life? How many of those things do we have in life where we say, it could be worse, it's not that bad. And so we just put off doing anything about it. It's so amazing. So many tiny little things like that. And so I think it's about becoming aware of this idea of region beta paradox. Like we put things off because it's not that bad. But the question is, how bad does it need to be? How bad does it need to be before you start? How bad does that job need to be before you start looking for jobs, or before you kind of put your notice in? How bad does that relationship need to get? How bad does your health situation need to get? And typically what I find is we kind of very quickly, you talked about it earlier, we get into that point where we just get a bit apathetic and we don't really just, it'll figure itself out. And we don't proactively take charge. And, you know, I've spoken to a lot of people, if they've got a job like that, they stop showing up. They don't show up for work. They're not really putting in the effort. And then something happens to them. Their boss calls them in and there's the HR person there and they say, like, you know, thank you for your service. And so the question is, how do we take charge of that? Like, we need to be the ones that move that psychological kind of tipping point, because it's purely a thought idea. Is at some point we need to take action and tip it in our favor. So typically, if we leave it long enough, something's going to happen to us, but it's usually more painful if we leave it than take charge ourselves.
I like the way you frame that. How bad does it have to get? And you see that where folks are, and I've been there, spiraling out of control, looking back on some of those things, some of those moments, and thinking it's pretty bad, and you let it get worse. And then having that set of outside eyes, and if you called me tomorrow and said, "Hey, come in and help me take a look at my life," I'm not going to judge you, but you may hear me go, Where's everybody that lets you get it into that shape? Where's everybody that to let it become this? And then generally it's that person. Man, tell me this. When can you type faster, Dan? Because I really want to read this book.
Right.
I do. I think you have to keep me posted as we're getting closer, because the things you just said, man, it's and the way you frame it is, I have conversations. I've had a conversation probably with some guys that I interact with 2 to 3 years, in the same conversation. Hey, yep, this is now just reinforced what I say. And like the other day, one of my friends, 3 years later, after just this conversation, every couple weeks, I'll run into him and we'll talk about the same thing. In 3 years, it was like a light bulb moment. He's like, I've been thinking about what you said the other day. And I was like, dude, I've been saying this for 3 years. And you're there with your book. And I think it's going to be such a great tool for just people in general. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. No matter what you're doing, you're dealing with imposter syndrome, you're dealing with negativity, you're dealing with all those things. And sometimes you're just struggling for that plan. I love where that's taking you, and I think it's going to be a powerful tool for you.
It's been a powerful tool for me. I've been speaking to a lot of people. They're like, so who's your target market? Who's your target market? You know, any marketing consultant say, you got a niche, you got to find a niche. And I probably do. Yeah, I probably do. But then someone was like, nah, that's rubbish. I don't marketing consultants. I used to be one, so I kind of know. They're always going to say what it's in it for them. But you talked about in the book, so there is one book out, which is this personal transformation blueprint. So get this is the one that talks about the initial expectation transformation, the mindset, kind of discipline, imposter syndrome aspect, and then that concept of sacrifice. That was a good one. And that definitely talks about a lot of the psychology behind those changes. But yeah, it's for me, the author. I said this. I said, imagine, because someone asked, I'm trying to sell this product. Like, who should I sell to? I said, imagine an individual, like the one person, because going from 0 to 1 is the hardest sale. Imagine that one person. Who is that one person that you need to help and you need to write this book for, or you need to sell the product to? And for me, I always come up with the same answer. I says, me, like about 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. Like, I'm writing this book that I wish I'd picked up and gone, obviously, like these are the things. And so I kind of write it in a way which takes the science, turns it into a really dumbed down version so even I can understand, and then slowly takes you on a journey which says, okay, well, when you're ready, let's go this way, but it's over here. And, sometimes it lands immediately. Sometimes, like you say, it lands a few years later where people are like, I finally got it. And, I've been around this world, this personal development world. I still remember lessons that I've been given that I haven't fully learned. Like, it's still sitting there in my head, and eventually I'm going to get it. And I'm going to be like, oh, okay, now I need to get it. But until that point, I'm going to still keep challenging myself, because I think seminars and books are great, but unless you activate them in the real world, you're never going to go into a situation where you're like, oh, that's what it means. And that really only happens at the edge of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's spot on there. I'm excited for that. And you're right. Sometimes we get advice and it doesn't become relevant till years later, days later, hours later. I've always told everyone that came back and kind of chastised me for not taking their advice. I'm like, I didn't say he was wrong. I just wasn't ready to listen.
Yeah.
Tell me, just looking back on your journey, what would you say was your biggest second chance? And how has that shaped your life and the work you do today?
I'm going to go really personal on this one. So I hope it's okay.
Yeah.
The reason I study a lot of this stuff, the psychology and the decision science, is because I've made some terrible decisions in my life. I think we all do. But I'd like to say I rank in the kind of top 10% of people who've made terrible decisions, I would like to say. But I used to spend a lot of time, like I said, in seminars and the personal development world. Like, my life was motivational seminars. And so I was surrounded by people that happy, clappy, cheery, all these kind of positive people. In my personal life, things weren't so great. My family life, a lot of people struggled from depression. And so I was seen as like, not the golden child, I don't want to say it like that, but I felt in my own life that I couldn't have problems because everybody else's problems were worse than mine. And I put a veneer on it. And I was like, yeah, everything's good, everything's fine. But reality behind the scenes is not everything was good. And I was doing things that I'm definitely not proud of. And I remember it all kind of came to a point where I couldn't carry on the lies anymore. And I just opened up and just said, look, this is all the crazy stuff that's going on. Hurt a few people in that process. And I remember lying at home, like, went back to your parents' house and you kind of, all stuff's falling apart. And lying there and I just felt like I'd done so many terrible things. And I called my sister, and everyone's got a person, right? Everyone's got that one person they can kind of just talk to. Hopefully everyone does. For me, it's my sister. I called her up and I said, hey, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. And everything hurts. Like, I don't know what to do. And she said this. She said, this is the first conversation where we've actually talked. Like, for the last however many years, you've just said everything's fine. And I've noticed not. But this is the first time where you've opened up and actually been a real person. And that kind of punched me in the face. And so I added to the pain. But it also gave me a massive lesson, which is it's okay not to feel positive. And this is weird. This was a weird realization. As it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to get angry and frustrated and all of those things. It's okay to feel positive and excited, motivated. We're not going to feel all those things all the time. And we shouldn't pretend. Like, pretending is the worst thing we can do. Like, if somebody says, how you doing? Like, Jeff, how you doing? It's like, today actually I'm great, but, not always. Like, and just be honest. And some people will go, oh, well, I wasn't ready for the honesty. But some people are, okay, well, tell me a bit more about it. And I think the more honest we can be with ourselves, the more real we can be. And, not taking a dig at social media, but definitely taking a dig at social media, is the more real we can be with ourselves, then And the more in touch we are with ourselves, then the more successful we'll be, because success isn't a case of being motivated every day. Like, don't believe the hype. Don't think it's all about, the top achievers are just waking up every day ready to go for it. They're not. They wake up tired. They wake up bored, frustrated, questioning why they're doing it. They have fear. They have imposter syndrome. They doubt themselves. They're not sure what their competitors are doing. They're all of these things, all of these feelings are there. And then they go, you know what? I'm going to go to work anyway. And that for me is the thing. It's like, sometimes I feel great. Sometimes I'm on top of the world. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to win this thing and I'm going to crush it. And then 5 seconds later, I'm like, you don't even know who's competing. You don't even know who's going to be good at. What you're tiny. What if you lose? What if you last? You embarrass yourself. And all of these voices come in all at the same time. And I say, you know what? I'm going to go do my workout. I'm going to do my 2,000 words. I'm going to do my coaching calls. I'm going to do these things as good as I can do them today. And I'm going to do what I can, because that's how I'm going to show up. And if we do that and we continue despite our feelings, then that's progress. That's where things really kick in.
It's a great way to close. And if you didn't hear what Dan said, make sure you rewind for about a minute and go back and listen to that, because you hear that in every, cope with what you can control. Focus on what you can control. Only you can't help things that are outside of your control. And then you layer in, you can have all these crazy thoughts and y'all can think all this, but y'all can think it while we're doing my 2,000 words. Y'all can think all this while I'm doing my workout. And it's just a really neat way, Dan, of how you approach it. It speaks to me. Not all things do, right? Sometimes I'm like left scratching my head going, hey, you're out to send me some more stuff and let me just consume. But like the way you present this speaks to just the rural Appalachian, Southwest Virginia guy who I don't have a lot of formal education. I graduated high school, and there's a lot of folks that are like me. And the way you frame it, man, is really, really simple. Comes across easy. I totally get it. I understand, and I'm excited to read your book and to learn more. But in the meantime, I'm excited to hear about how this Mr. Olympia World Bodybuilding Championship
It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it. See what happens.
Tell our audience how they can connect with you. What way would you like for folks to reach out and connect with you?
Come find me via my website, so danstorey.com, DANSTOREY.com, or come and find me on Amazon. So all my books will be on Amazon or are on Amazon. The big one at the moment is Personal Transformation Blueprint. So if you want to go through a personal challenge, whether that's in fitness, business, career, life, whatever it is, there's decent framework to kind of follow through. And like you say, go through some of the mental challenges that we've discussed today. And Jeff, just coming back to your point, this is why I do love sometimes having no music to train to, but I only do it when I'm running, because that same voice kicks in. And so I can only run for minimum 30 minutes, because for that first 30 minutes, the voice is like, you're tired, your knees hurt, you're tired, all of this hurt, why are you so tired? Why would you take a rest? Why do you sit down? After half an hour, and this is the same with everything, so I do the typing. It goes, all right, you're going to do this anyway, aren't you? I'll shut up. Let's get on with it.
I love it. Yeah. I made the voices in my head be quiet, right? So love it, Dan. Love what you're doing, man. I cannot thank you enough for sharing it with me and our audience and our platform at Second Chance Podcast, because you're truly like, not only are you're your own second chance and you can speak to that, but you're also that, what I like to say, you're that hope dealer. You're that light and that beacon that folks can go to that are struggling and that need what Dan is selling and saying, and everything in that pack. So I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you being here, and I can't wait to learn about more, read your other book. I can't wait to see the next one that's coming out, and then follow your journey through your Mr. Olympia.
Thanks, Jeff. I'll keep you posted, and I'll send you a photo from the victory stage.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I ain't got to do but win, right? That's awesome, Dan. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.